Hello, fellow law nerds. Welcome to another episode of Boom Lawyered, a Rewire News Group podcast hosted by the legal journalism team that thinks if you don't stand up for trans kids, then you're a bad person. I'm Rewire News Group's editor-at-large, Imani Gandhi.
And I'm Jess Pieklo, Rewire News Group's executive editor. Rewire News Group is the one and only home for expert repro journalism that inspires you to stand up for trans kids. I mean, come on, seriously. And the Boom Lawyered podcast is part of that mission. So big thanks to our subscribers and a welcome to our new listeners and viewers. So today, folks, we are going to talk about a case that could very well have the Supreme Court wading into one of the hottest topics right now, and that's trans athletes in sports. And if the Supreme Court wades in, they could issue a blow to trans rights in this country and a blow to girls' sports in general. Ugh. But here's the thing. It gets pretty dicey because this case is at the Supreme Court right now on an emergency application. So, Imani, you know what that means.
Shadow docket?
Shadow docket.
Oy vey, shadow docket. First, let's talk about what this case is about. That's what we're going to talk about right now. What is this case about? The case involves a young girl named Becky Pepper-Jackson.
What a name!
I love this girl's name. Hi, my name is Becky Pepper-Jackson. She seems like she's a girl who sells lemonade out by a farm and just has a pet goat that she loves really a lot. And, she just likes to run. And that's what this girl does. She's a 12-year-old trans kid living in West Virginia who loves running. And even though she's not particularly great at it, she was really super excited to join her middle school cross-country team.
Imani, this is a 12-year-old kid. That's kind of rude.
I don't mean it to be. I really don't mean it to be. I'm not trying to be shady, but I'm just pointing out that the panic surrounding trans kids in general, like trans kids in sports, it just generally has to do with, but it's not fair because boys are better at sports than girls. And if we let quote unquote boys play with the quote unquote girls, then it's not fair to the quote unquote girls. But that's not the case in most instances, right? And that's not the case here. Conservatives are taking draconian measures to remove trans kids from sports based on a made up problem that isn't even a problem. And in West Virginia, they're taking draconian measures to target one girl, one 12-year-old girl named Becky Pepper-Jackson.
I mean, as if these people ever gave a chicken fried fuck about girls' sports unless and until it gives them an opportunity to attack trans kids.
You said it, sister. I don't know why you said it, sister. Right on, sister. So,
yeah.
Becky Pepper-Jackson just wants to run around with her friends, right? She wants to play. She wants to be a fucking kid. But West Virginia Governor Jim Justice, yeah, his name is Jim Justice. Jim Justice signed the Save Women's Sports legislation into law and nearly blocked Becky Pepper-Jackson from being able to join her school cross-country team.
I'm just going to let this whole Jim Justice thing go.
But Jess, that's his name. Governor Jim Justice. Do you know that he solves crimes with Briscoe cane? Pew, 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 pew.
I know, it's like the total spot for finger guns. But look, I am letting it go because we've got serious business at hand. Jim Justice, that's not a real name. I'm sorry, it's not. All right, here's what's going on. Lawmakers in West Virginia claimed a need for legislation to ensure that sports were as safe and fair as possible, right? And thus, the Save Women's Sports Act was born. Now, get this. I'm sorry, my stomach already hurts. The stated purpose of this legislation is to address claims of, quote, biological males increasingly competing against and beating females in women's sports events.
Nope.
Unquote.
No.
I'm sorry.
No, because that's not really a problem. There is not an epidemic of trans athletes beating out cisgender athletes, right? Sports organizations at the professional level have protocols to determine if a particular athlete is fit for playing on the team that aligns with their gender identity, right? The IOC, the International Olympics Committee, for example, has margins for testosterone levels. So if you fall outside those margins, you can't compete. The World Athletics Association, same deal. They require that trans women athletes reduce testosterone levels for 12 months prior to competing. So that's at the professional level. This is a middle school cross country team.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, Imani, because we are in full-fledged trans panic fever right now, right? Because states really care about girls' sports, like so much. They care so hard that they use this as an opportunity to collect private health data on girls in sports, to impose invasive procedures onto teens and preteen girls, all to ensure that no trans kids are trying to sneak their way onto an inappropriate sports team. That's what they're going to do.
But they're cherry picking cases, right? They're cherry picking cases where trans athletes beat out cis athletes. Right. Even though the overwhelming evidence suggests that it is perfectly fair for trans athletes, particularly again at the middle school and high school level, it is fine for trans girls to compete on the teams that align with their gender identity. And let's be clear, they're mostly concerned about trans girls. They don't care about trans boys. They don't care about trans boys.
No. Well, I mean, look. Here's what West Virginia Solicitor General Lindsay C. had to say about it. All right? I'm sure this is going to be great for learning butts. This quote, "The Sports Act ensures fair and safe play in women's and girls' sports. It restricts no one from trying out for men's, boys, or co-ed teams. The act thus aims to promote equal athletic opportunity for the female sex."
I hate it.
"Due to inherent differences of biology that make it unfair or even dangerous for males to compete against female athletes."
I hate it. I hate it.
I mean, that's what they're saying. So the argument basically goes like this, right? Every time a transgender woman earns a roster spot or wins a medal, she is denying her cisgender opponents of a federally protected opportunity. There's a right to be precious.
A book by Sapphire. Sorry. But Jess, that's not backed by science. Like, all the stuff that you just said is not backed by science.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't matter, though, Imani, because it feels true.
Oh.
It feels true.
Like
right?
Stephen Colbert and the truthiness? Is that what we're doing now?
Like, I'm feeling it in my third chakra.
My third chakra. Okay. All right. Be that as it may, even if we're going to concede all of that it's not fair because it's, girls are fragile vessels and all this nonsense, that's not the case here, right? And this is a case about Becky Pepper-Jackson, who just wants to run on her goddamn school cross-country team. Okay, Becky Pepper-Jackson, we love you, but you're not that great at running, right? Like, if you look at her stats, she routinely placed last or second to last in her competitions, which, you know what? I think that makes her more of a badass because she's just out there doing it for fun. She doesn't care if she's coming in last. She doesn't care if she has to get dragged off the mountain on a snowmobile. Wait, no, that was me snowboarding. Never mind. I'm having flashbacks. I'm having flashbacks. But it's not always about the competition, right? Sometimes it's about being on that mountain and having fun with your friends until the snowmobile has to drag you off the mountain. It's about running cross country in middle school with your friends and placing last and not caring because you know what? You're outside, and sometimes school sports, interscholastic sports is more than about competition. It's about camaraderie. It's about community. It's about hanging out with your doggone friends.
Absolutely. And, that's basically what the district court said and ruled in this case the first time it took a look at it before the judge decided to take an entire 180. I hate it.
Okay. So what are Becky's arguments?
Yeah, what are they? Let's get into the law here.
All right, here we go. The decision to prevent her from playing sports violates her rights under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Makes sense. And Title IX.
Yep.
She argues that West Virginia's ban violates equal protection by discriminating based on transgender status. Makes sense to me.
Pretty straightforward.
Denying opportunities based on sex, right? There's that based on sex language. The law requires an exceedingly persuasive justification, right? Exceedingly persuasive. You know,
That's a pretty high constitutional standard.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Becky Pepper-Jackson also argues that's such a great name. Like, truly.
It's such a good name.
But she also argues that it's a clear violation of Title IX, and that's the law that grants equal access opportunities in education, regardless of sex or gender, right? So she says that it's a clear violation of Title IX that an institution that receives department funds, look, they have to operate its education program or activity in a non-discriminatory manner. That's what the law says. Free of discrimination based on sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. This should be a pretty straightforward slam dunk case. Advocates claim West Virginia's reasoning for excluding Becky specifically does not meet this standard of scrutiny. In fact, here's what Josh Block from the American Civil Liberties Union, an all-around real smart guy, had to say about it.
So smart. That dude is so smart.
So smart. But I mean, he hits it. Here's what he has to say. Here you have a law that has this categorical exclusion of trans girls. Like, literally, if you are a trans girl, no sports for you, functionally. And the alleged justification for the law is that there are athletic advantages associated with the changes that happen during puberty. That can't possibly provide an exceedingly persuasive justification or, meet the constitutional standard for excluding Becky from the team, because none of those justifications actually apply to her.
Yeah.
Like, none.
Yeah.
She hasn't gone through puberty?
Hadn't gone
None
through
of
puberty.
it.
Nope. So let's talk about how the court ruled, right? That's the second
'Cause
thing
it's a
we're going to
mess.
talk about. It's a goddamn mess. It's an absolute mess. So U.S. District Court Judge Goodwin issued a preliminary injunction blocking this ban in 2021, right? He looked at the West Virginia ban and was like, nope, blocking it. At the time, he pointed out that Becky Pepper-Jackson had been taking puberty blockers, right? And thus she had not accrued any of the purported, quote unquote, purported physical advantages that would allegedly flow from going through male puberty. She hasn't gone through puberty. And so Goodwin suggested that Becky stood a good chance of proving that excluding her from the girls' team would violate her rights under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and it would violate her rights to be free from discrimination because of sex under Title IX, right? Jess just talked about that. Goodwin also concluded that Becky would suffer irreparable injury and that allowing her to play would not disadvantage other girls, right? This is one 12-year-old girl, one girl in West Virginia. The whole system is not going to collapse if the one girl who's actually not that great at running is permitted to join the goddamn cross-country team. Love you, Becky Pepper-Jackson, but, we're advocating for you here, so this is all part of the advocacy process.
I mean, it sounds good so far, right?
Right.
Except it's not, because Goodwin reversed course and found that the legislature's definition of girl as being based on biological sex is substantially related to the important government interest of providing equal athletic opportunities for females.
I mean, please. Important government interest my ass. When has the government ever cared about women's sports? Come on, man. I can't.
I mean... Anyway, so we've got this split, right? And then the parties submitted a bunch of evidence. And as a result, he became convinced that trans girls are not similarly situated to cisgender girls for purposes of sports competition, and that Title IX's ban on discrimination because of sex should not be interpreted to apply to should be interpreted to apply to biological sex and not gender identity. So let me say that again. The party submitted a bunch of evidence, and through that, Goodwin became convinced that trans girls are just not the same as cisgender girls for purposes of competition. And he granted summary judgment to West Virginia. I hate this, Imani. I hate this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like smoke and mirror stuff. So in that summary judgment ruling, he ruled that West Virginia had the right to legislate sports rules on the basis because of sex and physical characteristics that flow from it, because they're substantially related to athletic performance and fairness in sports. It's an essentialist argument.
It's a bitch ass move is what it is. I'm sorry, but it absolutely is.
She's
right?
not wrong, folks. She's not wrong.
It's just rank bitch acidness is what it is. Because Goodwin pointed out that at the time that this law was passed, there was no widespread reports of transgender girls participating in sports, right?
Right.
This one girl, Becky Pepper-Jackson. That's it. Becky Pepper-Jackson. And so he said that it was apparent that the statute was at best a solution to a potential but not yet realized problem. He knew that this wasn't a problem, but decided that he had to weigh in anyway and essentially bully a 12-year-old girl out of being able to participate on the sports team. What the heck, man?
Sometimes you can just say nothing, sir.
Sometimes just let Becky Pepper-Jackson run on the cross-country team.
I mean, come on. So Becky's attorneys did the very reasonable thing and appealed the hell out of that decision, right?
Right.
They asked the Fourth Circuit to step in, and the Fourth Circuit agreed to and ruled in February that Becky could resume running. Hallelujah, right? This ruling applies only to her and nobody else. So we have West Virginia filing an emergency application now, asking the Supreme Court to reverse what the Fourth Circuit did, to reverse a ruling that applies to one child. They want the entire weight of the Supreme Court to step in. West Virginia's asked Chief Justice Roberts to vacate that Fourth Circuit stay, arguing that it, quote unquote, upsets the way things traditionally work in school sports. What the fuck, man? It's one kid.
One kid. And I noticed you said that they filed an emergency application.
They did.
So that's a little bit shadow dockety for me. It's kind of not.
Yep.
I mean, right. We're talking shadow docket here, right?
Yep. This is a shadow docket case, folks.
Okay. I'm going to need you to explain again to our lovely listeners and viewers, what the fuck is the shadow docket and why does it exist?
Straighten myself.
Yeah, here we go.
So, the docket.
The dictionary defines docket as
in the beginning of time. The Supreme Court is a famously non-transparent institution, right? One of the only ways that we even know what the fuck is going on with the court ever is its docket. And the docket is literally where they put the cases on, and it says what they're hearing, what the arguments are. It's how the regular folks can pay attention to what's going on at the court. The shadow docket is like the Supreme Court's side piece, right?
Oh my God.
It's the docket that exists that nobody ever wants to talk about but has substantial influence on policy.
Oh my God. The shadow docket is basically Pete Davidson. Right? I'm just saying.
That's like a whole other
That's a
episode.
whole other episode, but I feel like Pete Davidson is the shadow docket.
The shadow docket helps the court move from one risky policy decision to another, basically. That's a metaphor that's going to keep on going. But so really, the shadow docket is a place where the Supreme Court hears cases, not that it's going to decide on the merits, right? The merits is like the substance of the law, but on these procedural points. And they can have huge impact. One, you don't get the like meat and potatoes of the argument on the shadow docket. You just get this procedural stuff. And then two, there's never any actual arguments made by attorneys. The courts are just ruling however the fuck they want to rule on it. The shadow docket is what got us the Texas bounty hunter, any random motherfucker abortion ban. That's how it went into effect. So the shadow docket is bad news.
It's giving me heartburn.
And this case on the shadow docket is real bad news.
I mean, we're talking about the human rights of the most vulnerable population in this country right now being determined behind closed doors.
Right.
Because one girl wants to run cross cross country badly.
And the state of West Virginia just can't handle it. It's breaking its fucking brain.
All right. So we need to talk about a third thing, and that's whether or not the Supreme Court is going to wade into this mess, right? Like, all right. The law surrounding trans people is scarce at the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah.
The federal courts haven't even sorted themselves out when it comes to trans rights. 4 years ago, picture this. Washington, D.C., 2019, right? The Supreme Court declined to take a case out of the Third Circuit. It was Boyertown versus Doe. It was remember that case? It's the case where they found that cisgender students just don't have a right to privacy in bathrooms and locker rooms that outweighs a trans kid's right to use a bathroom that aligns with their gender identity, right? Yeah. That was back in 2019. The Supreme Court went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, nah, we're not dealing with this. We're not doing this today. And that's basically all of the law that exists when it comes to sports and bathrooms and trans people at the Supreme Court level.
Yeah, we do have the Bostock and Stevens case,
That's true.
And that involves Title VII, which is the federal employment law that prohibits discrimination in your job, basically. And we talked about this on our last trans rights episode, right? So Title VII is a federal civil rights statute, like Title IX. They all kind of go together. And we being like lawyers and the people, read these statutes the same. So if Title VII says you can't discriminate on the basis of sex, and that includes gender identity, which the Bostock and Stevens cases do, then Title IX should be read the same way. Because why would you have one statute that says you can discriminate on the basis of sex this way and another that says the exact opposite? Like, that's chaos, right? The law doesn't like that. So if we have a shadow docket application that's saying actually read Title IX in conflict with Title VII, that's a sideways attack on the Bostock decision. Also, perfect fodder for the conservatives on the Supreme Court, the FedSoc 6, to enact some fuckery here.
Well, here's another big problem.
Oh?
The cultural zeitgeist when it comes to trans rights has shifted dramatically over the last 6 or 7 years. If you remember in 2016, for example, right? We're in the middle of March Madness right now, right? In 2016, after the bathroom bill that North Carolina passed, which said that in public places of public accommodation, you have to use the bathroom that aligns with your biological sex. If you recall, the NCAA actually pulled the basketball tournament games from North Carolina, right? Yeah. And then North Carolina repealed that bathroom bill because it was a bullshit bill and everyone was all outraged. And then the NCAA said, okay, all right, we got you. And then rewarded them by putting the games back in North Carolina.
Yeah, it was a whole thing.
It was a huge deal. Like, it's a huge deal when the NCAA is like, we're going to protect our trans athletes. Or even if there are no trans athletes that are playing in these games, we're going to protect trans athletes generally. We don't agree with this bigoted bullshit. We out.
Yeah. And when we were prepping for this episode, Austin, one of our producers, pointed out that the NBA was involved in this decision as well, too. So it was the NCAA, it was professional basketball, it was the entire community coming together and say, hey, let's not be jerks. Like, let's actually just not do any of this. But where are we now? We've got the NCAA tournament having games in Texas. No shade to our Texans. We love you.
We love Texans.
Your state is one of the most hostile states right now to trans rights. And nobody's even talking about this. It's not on the radar at all. It's just like, go play basketball.
Yeah. And we also have to talk about the court shift, right? It wasn't just a cultural shift. It was a shift in court personnel, right? In 2019, when the Supreme Court declined to take that Boyertown case that I just talked about and said that cis girls don't have a right to privacy in the bathroom that outweighed trans girls' right to use the bathroom that aligned with their gender identity. In 2019, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was still with us, right? And Amy Coney Barrett was just a professor at Notre Dame. She was just nobody knew who the hell she was. Was she a professor or was she on the Seventh Circuit by then? I think she was
Either way, she was doing something not great.
Either way, she wasn't on the Supreme Court. So we have a cultural shift. And with transgender politics now becoming the third rail of Christofascism, right? Like if you need to prove your Christofascist bona fides, you got to attack trans people. Like them's the rules. So it is taken as a matter of fact now that trans people are pedophiles and they're groomers. And any conservative worth their salt, if they have an opportunity to stick it to trans kids, they better take that opportunity or else they're going to see themselves just outside of the political process when it comes to conservatism. So we have that personnel shift that at the court that doesn't bode well for trans rights. And our producer, Austin, has told us that she joined the Seventh Circuit in 2017. So I'm sorry I was mistaken when I said that she was still a professor in 2019. She was actually on the Seventh Circuit, stealing a black woman's seat, by the way. If you don't remember, do you remember that?
She did. I totally remember. I love instant outrage. Instant spontaneous outrage by Jess and Imani is one of my favorite moments.
That needs to be like a side podcast, right? Instant outrage with Jess and Imani. So, we have that sort of personnel shift that doesn't bode well for trans rights now in a way that was different 4 years ago. Also, did you know that there's that the organization in West Virginia, the West Virginia Secondary School Activities Commission, this organization oversees scholastic sports.
Yeah.
They have said that they have not received a single complaint about transgender athletes on girls' teams. Not a single complaint. What the fuck, bro? What the fuck?
I'm not surprised because this has always been a solution looking for a problem by conservatives, right? And I mean, look, if it wasn't clear before, it should be very clear now that this is just ginned up nonsense by culture war conservatives who have decided to train their ire on trans people since, look, I mean, they kind of caught the car on the abortion issue, and it's hard to get folks as riled up there as they used to. I'll say this, though. At least the Biden administration's on the right side of this case.
Yes.
Okay. In a recent filing, the Department of Justice said a state law that limits or denies a particular class of people's ability to participate in public, federally funded educational programs and activities solely because their gender identity does not match their sex assigned at birth, violates both Title IX and the Equal Protection Clause. West Virginia's law does exactly this. And hey, look, the Biden administration isn't even taking like a radical position. They are just reading Title IX the same way the Supreme Court read Title VII. So if the Supreme Court has any consistency here, it should read Title IX the same way it read Title VII.
And that's all she wrote, folks. So, look, we've talked a lot. We've spewed a lot of words into your face. So here's the lowdown. If you're at a cocktail party and you want to talk about Becky Pepper-Jackson's case, here's what you need to know. She is one 12-year-old girl who wants to run cross country on her middle school team. She lives in a state, West Virginia, where there has been not a single complaint about a transgender athlete playing on a girls' team. Her entire team accepts her. She's not particularly good at running anyway, so all of the excuses about how it's unfair and she's taking away opportunities from quote unquote, girls, that's all horseshit. Right? Mm-hmm. This is just, as Jessa said, a ginned up culture war by conservatives who know that the zeitgeist has shifted, right? In 2016, people were anti these bills that attack trans people. It's now 2023. We've got Amy Coney Barrett on the court. RBG, rest her soul, is no longer with us. And so now it's stick it to trans kids or else you're not a true conservative.
Right.
And that's what you need to know. Jess?
It is a sideways attack on Bostock and sticking it to trans kids. One child. The conservative legal movement has trained its entire force on one kid out of West Virginia.
And her name? Becky Pepper-Jackson. Okay. Keep fighting, Becky Pepper-Jackson.
We got you. And, okay, before we close, folks, we've got some exciting news for you. I'm a little sweaty about this. I'm not going to lie. But Boom Lawyered is coming to DC. Woo! Yeah! We are on the Dude, baby, I almost said bitches. So here's what's happening. This is so exciting. We are coming to the Summit for Religious Freedom. What is the Summit for Religious Freedom? It is the hub for our collective fight against white Christian nationalism right now. Imani and I are going to be there with our show. Yeah. This is feeling so good. All right. So hosted by Americans United for Separation of Church and State, the Summit for Religious Freedom is a big tent. Longtime advocates and new activists will be there, believers, non-believers, experts, people just waking up to the threat posed by Christian nationalism. It's audience ripe for the pickin', Imani.
Yes.
So if you go to thesrf.org, it's got all the information about this new conference. It's April 22nd to the 24th. That's when we will be there. Folks can attend in person in Washington, D.C., virtually from anywhere. This is going to be our first real, true live show, folks.
We're ready for our close-up.
The fight for true religious freedom and church-state separation is the fight for the progressive issues that we care the most about. That's what we talk about on the show all the time, right? LGBTQ rights, reproductive rights, protecting public schools, our institutions. Like, this is the threat. So we are thrilled to bring Boom Lawyered there and can't wait for the programming that comes out.
It's going to be fantastic. Again, that website is thesrf.org. And if you would like to talk to me or Jess about anything at all, succession.
Oh, I have thoughts.
Jess has thoughts. Migraines.
Bruce Springsteen's current tour.
Bruce Springsteen's ass. That's a topic of discussion that we might want to get into. You can find me on Twitter at Angry Black Lady. You can find Jess on Twitter at Hegemami. You can guarantee that neither of us have paid for our check marks.
Nope.
Okay. We're trying to get rid of them. They just won't take them away. You should follow Rewire News Group, also not paying for its check mark. You should follow us on Instagram, Rewire News Group on Instagram, and on YouTube. If you follow our YouTube channel, you will get notifications for when our podcasts go live. And if you don't want to watch us live, which, why wouldn't you? You can find our podcast wherever you normally get your podcasts, Google Play, Apple Music, Nordstrom Rack, GeoCities, whatever, Finger guns, winks, yada, yada. And on that note, what are we going to do, Jess?
We're going to see you on the tubes, folks.
We'll see you on the tubes, folks.